Welcome to our pre-Pesach virtual Kumzits. We will hear from Tani and Bini some beautiful Seder melodies, and you'll hear from me some inspiring Pesach tidbits. So, I hope you enjoy it, and let's get started. But before we get started, we have to understand that this year our Seders are going to be very different. Many of us are going to be just with our immediate household. Some of us will just be with our spouse or our partner, and some of us will be just alone. So I encourage you that this year make your Seder the best Seder possible. On the contrary, this year we have to put more effort into making this Seder the most enjoyable, meaningful Seder maybe that you ever have experienced. Pesach is the birthday of our nation. It's the foundation of our faith. It's such a significant festival. We must make the most of it. So please, for the Seder night, make sure you dress your best in your Shabbat or Yom Tov clothes, as if you're hosting guests. Prepare a beautiful table, a real nice Seder table, with all the things that you need. Prepare your favorite Pesach foods. Get a beautiful Haggadah, Hebrew and English. Especially if you don't understand Hebrew, you read it in English, and make sure that everybody reads out different parts of it aloud. Even if you're just with your spouse or partner or by yourself, read it out aloud. Make it meaningful. There are plenty of insights that you could look in Chabad.org or Aish.com, and also many different games. So prepare yourself beforehand to make the Seder special. Also, put some little things on the table like frogs and sheep, and how about dressing up? Have some dress-ups, like get a pharaoh hat. Just because you're alone doesn't mean you can't have fun. Just because you're just with your spouse or partner doesn't mean you can't have fun. You can even have a frog hat. Wow, or even this frog hat. Just dress up and make it lots of fun and meaningful. So let's get started with the Seder. The Seder shouldn't start before dark, which means the Kiddush should start at 6:35. Remember, it is a very big mitzvah to have 4 cups of either wine or grape juice. If you can drink the whole cup each time, great. If not, the majority, and if not, just a third. A third of the cup is enough. And make sure you do it 4 times throughout the Seder where indicated in the Haggadah. Once we make the Kiddush, we wash our hands, dip the karpas in salt water, we break the middle matzah, and then we're ready to recite the Haggadah. Halach ma'anya, and then we come to a central part of the Haggadah, the Manishtana. It says in the Talmud that the Exodus must be told as a response to a question. So we have to precede the Haggadah with questions. Now, generally, it's a child asks the question, but the Talmud says, what happens if you don't have your children with you? Then your spouse should ask the question to you. Either one, ask the question to the other. And the Talmud continues and says, even if you're alone, ask the question to yourself, because the Haggadah must be said as a response to a question. But the question is, why? So I'll just give you 2 brief answers. First of all, when you ask a question, you arouse your curiosity. It intrigues you. Yes, why? So then you absorb the answer much more. Rather than just saying statements, telling a story, but when you proceed with a question, then you absorb the answer more. But also, we know that the night of the Seder is the night of liberation. Pesach, we were liberated. And it's not only the physical liberation, but also mental and psychological and spiritual liberation. And one of the ways to mentally and spiritually liberate ourselves is to go beyond ourselves a little bit, beyond our ego. Asking a sincere question is expressing that I don't know the answer. I don't know everything. And I'm seeking to learn more things that I don't know, absorb new ideas, take in what other people have to say, learn from others. That is a crucial step in liberating ourselves, letting our ego go and going above ourselves. But one more important thing I would like to say before Tani and Bini will sing the Manishtana for us, or with us. A lot of us might think we're alone, but if you have any departed parents, we know there is a custom in Chabad and in others that when the child asks the Manishtana, they precede it with a statement. And the statement is, Father, Mother, I would like to ask you 4 questions. So what happens if your parents are not here? So the Rebbe says something very powerful. Because in Chabad custom and many others, everybody says the Manishtana after, if there's a child that recites it, then even the parents and others recite it. And they precede it also with Father, Mother, we would like to ask you 4 questions. So the Rebbe says that if your parents are in heaven, you still should say the statement addressing them. And you say, Father and Mother, and have in mind that in heaven, I would like to ask you 4 questions. And when you say that, the Rebbe says that he's an authority who could say this, the souls of your parents come down into this world and join you at the Seder. So you won't be alone.
Please join us for Manishtana. Manishtana halayla hazeh mikol halelot mikol halelot shebechol halelot anu ochlim chametz umatzah chametz umatzah.
now we come to the answer. And we start off with Avadim Hayinu, that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And God took us out. But then it says, and if God would have not taken us out, we would still be enslaved to Pharaoh in Egypt. Now, does that really make sense? There's thousands of years have gone by. Do you still think we would still be slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt? So the answer is like this. The meaning of this paragraph is that if God wouldn't have taken us out with divine intervention, then who knows what could have happened? Most probably, we would have either assimilated in the Egyptian culture, even if Pharaoh would have liberated us, we would have assimilated. Even if we might have left Egypt, but we might have returned. And more importantly, we would have still had inside of us the slave mentality. You know, take an example. The black population of Mauritania in Western Africa, that even many years after they abolished slavery, they still couldn't get rid of the mental slavery. In 1997 in the New York Times, one of them said, this is 18 years after they abolished slavery, and this man said, just like God made a camel, he made me a slave. They couldn't get rid of their slave mentality. And even more importantly, we would have never been a distinct Jewish nation with a mission and a goal to learn Torah and do mitzvahs and to be a light unto the nation. It's only because God took us out of Egypt, because there was divine intervention. He took us out and gave us a Torah and a mission. That's when we were freed also from our slave mentality. We didn't go back to Egypt. And we became a distinct Jewish holy nation. And without that, it wouldn't have happened. Because even with the divine intervention, there were some in the desert that said it's better to go back to Egypt. So God had to continuously uplift them out of this slave mentality and to remind them all the time that they are free. We will continue with a beautiful song by Tani and Bini, Avadim Hayinu.
Let's sing Avadim Hayinu. Hey, Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu. Hey, Levado b'Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim. Avadim Hayinu, Levado b'Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim. Avadim Hayinu, Levado b'Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim. Avadim Hayinu, Ata b'nechorim b'nechorim. Avadim Hayinu, Hayinu, Levado b'Mitzrayim, b'Mitzrayim. Avadim Hayinu, Ata b'nechorim b'nechorim. Avadim Hayinu, Ata b'nechorim b'nechorim.
Now we continue with the Haggadah. Please, again, read it out aloud. Say some interpretations. One of the beautiful parts of the Haggadah, the popular parts of the Haggadah, are the four children. The wise, the wicked, the simple, and the one who doesn't know even how to ask. Now, focusing on the wicked child, what is the question of the wicked child? Ma ha'avodah zot lachem. What is this service for you? So the fact that he says for you is excluding him or herself. But the question is, if you look at the wording of the wise son, of the Chacham, he says, what are these commandments, laws, and statutes which God, our God, has commanded you? He also says you, the same as the wicked child. What is the difference? There are many interpretations. I'll just share with you a few. The first simple, straightforward question is that the difference in the Hebrew words is one is lachem and one is etchem. Lachem is excluding self. Etchem doesn't really exclude self. Also, in the wise child's wording, he says, Lord our God. He includes himself. That's our God. But then there's a beautiful interpretation I once heard from one of the past chief rabbis of the British Commonwealth, Lord Emanuel Jakubowicz. He said the following: how do we know there are 4 children with 4 different questions? It's based on the actual Bible, the text of the Bible. In 4 different places in the Bible, it says, if your child will ask so-and-so, again, a second time, a third time, a fourth time, each time in a different way. So the sages deduce from this that there are 4 different types of children. Now, it says, that Rabbi Jakubowicz said, that the wise son's question is actually in the last book, Deuteronomy, of the 5 books of Moses. The question of the wicked child is in the 2nd book, in Exodus. So that's the difference. A wise child learns first, tries to understand, and then asks a question. A wicked, so to speak, child doesn't learn too much. They just ask questions before even learning much. A nice novel interpretation. But then there is even a deeper interpretation. The difference between the wise child's question and the wicked child's question is that the wise child is asking a respectful question, and the wicked child is not asking a question. They're belittling their parents. And it's not their fault. They are children of postmodern parents, which instead of guiding their children, they actually ask their children questions and give them too many choices. Like, gorgeous, would you like to go to bed now? Or, pretty, please, can you please make your bed? And so and so. True, we have to empower our children even from a young age and give them options and allow them to make their own choices, but within a context. Many parents give too much authority, so to speak, to their children, which they cannot really handle. Parents have to make boundaries. Children need clear boundaries and clear directives. What is right, what is wrong, what is allowed, what is permitted. This is fundamental. And they need to see this in an authoritative figure. The parent has to be an authoritative figure and therefore not cave in to the whims and desires of their children, because the children see that, they lose respect. So the wise child is a product of wise parents. They don't belittle their parents. They ask questions because they know that they need to ask, because their parents know more than them. A wicked child doesn't ask their questions to the parents because they don't respect their parents. They just belittle them. In the middle of the Haggadah, we come to the Vehi Sha'amda, which Bini and Tani will sing soon. Vehi Sha'amda, we lift up the cup, and the Vehi Sha'amda means It's preceded with thanking God for keeping his promise and calculating the end of the exile. God promised Abraham that 400 years after the birth of his son Isaac, he will liberate the Jews from Egypt. And he kept his word. So we say, thank you, God, for keeping your word, not only then, but the promises you made to the prophets, that you will keep your word to preserve the Jewish nation. And it's only because of this promise that we are still here today. And that is the meaning of Vehi She'amda. It is this, Vehi and this, that stood for our parents and for us. Because in every generation there is someone who wants to annihilate us, and ultimately God preserves us. But there's also another interesting interpretation. The word Vehi is made up of 4 letters: Vav, Hey, Yud, Aleph. Vav is the number 6, referring to the 6 tractates of the Mishnah, the oral Torah. Hey is the 5 books of Moses, that's 5. Yud is 10, the 10 commandments, and Aleph is 1, the belief in one God. It is the God of Israel, and both the written and the oral Torah that has stood for us, that has preserved us, and we are still here today because of the power of Torah. Let us hear Vehi She'amda.
Vehi She'amda, Vehi She'amda, Lavoteinu velanu. Vehi She'amda, Vehi She'amda, Lavoteinu velanu. Shelo echad bilvad, amad aleinu lechalotenu. Shelo echad bilvad, amad aleinu lechalotenu. Ella shebechol domadon, amdim aleinu lechalotenu. Ella shebechol domadon, amdim aleinu lechalotenu. Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu biyadam. Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu biyadam. Vehi she'amda, Vehi she'amda, lavoteinu velanu. Vehi she'amda, Vehi she'amda, lavoteinu velanu. Shelo echad bilvad, amad aleinu lechalotenu. Shelo echad bilvad, amad aleinu lechalotenu. Ella shebechol domadon, amdim aleinu lechalotenu. Ella shebechol domadon, amdim aleinu lechalotenu. Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu biyadam. Ve'akadosh baruch hu matzilenu biyadam.
During the Haggadah, we also talk about the 10 plagues. And when we recite the 10 plagues, we spill the wine, or we take our finger and dip it in the wine and spill it and drop it in a plate. The question you might ask is, why in Jewish religious ritual is we always do it over a cup of wine? A bris is over a cup of wine, a wedding is over a cup of wine, Kiddush is over a cup of wine, on the Seder night, 4 cups of wine. Why always wine? Why can't we remain dry? So, of course, we have to be very careful. We have to take alcohol in moderation. But nevertheless, we still have wine on every special occasion. And one of the many reasons is that when we make a blessing over an occasion, we just don't want to just recite it in words. We want to absorb it. We want to make it part of our system, our body, our psyche. So when we drink it, It's symbolic of taking in the blessing, taking in the special occasion. So therefore, when it comes to the 10 plagues, that's something which we don't want to take in, absorb. So therefore, when we recite the 10 plagues, we take out a bit of wine, not to drink it. But there are actually two customs in how we spill the wine. The Chabad custom and others is actually to literally pour the wine each time we recite the 10 plagues. There is another custom to take our finger and dip it in the wine and drop it in a plate. The reason for these two customs is, I'll start with the second one. The reason why we use a finger, because it's symbolic of what the Egyptians said about one of the 10 plagues, that this is the finger of God. So we're talking about the 10 plagues, it was the finger of God, so we use our finger. The reason why some actually pour out the wine, because we know there is in the prophets it says that when your enemy falls, do not rejoice. So when we speak about the liberation of Egypt, it's also we speak about the destruction of Egypt. But we're not rejoicing on the destruction of Egypt. We're really rejoicing on our liberation. So therefore, in order to remember that we're not rejoicing on the fall of our enemy, whenever we speak about the 10 plagues, which speaks about the destruction of our enemy, we pour it out wine to remember that verse that when our enemy falls, we do not rejoice. And now we come to another popular part of the Seder, Dayenu. This year, Dayenu has so much more significance. Dayenu means it would have been enough. If God would have taken out of Egypt and not punished the Egyptians, if God would have not destroyed their idols, if He would have not killed their firstborn, if He would not given us their money, if He would have not taken us through the sea, all these things, if you would have just one of those things, it would have been enough. A lot of time, at this time, we might think we don't have enough. We don't have all our family around us. We don't have the freedom that we had in previous years. But we have to say, you know what? I have my health. That's enough. I can breathe. That's enough. I have food on the table. That's enough. I have shelter. That's enough. I can think. I can read, I can study, I can contemplate. That's enough. My family is well and healthy. That's for sure enough. Let us sing Dayenu this year with even more fervor and passion. Let's hear Dayenu.
Ilu ilu etzianu min Mitzrayim velo asamba shvatim tayenu. Ilu asamba em shvatim velo asam Elohim adayenu. Ilu asam Elohim velo arag et b'choreim bayenu. Ilu arang et choreim elo nadalanu et mamono medayenu. Dayenu, 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 Karano et tayam velo eviran דיינו. אילו שיקצר לנו בתוכו ולא סיפק צרכנו במדבר 40 שנה. אילו סיפק צרכנו במדבר 40 שנה ולא הכיל לנו את המן.
So we finish up the Haggadah and we say the Allah's blessing and we drink the second cup. Again, we lean to the left like the first cup and drink at least a third of it. Then we wash our hands and we make al-Tirat Yadayim and then we eat the matzah. Now, the meaning of the matzah as well as the reciting of the Haggadah are the two biblical mitzvahs of the night. And it is a mitzvah commandment to recite the Haggadah and to eat matzah. Now, when you have to eat matzah, you need to have a certain amount. So first of all, we encourage everybody, halacha says, that preferable is to have shmura matzah. And we need to eat a certain amount. If you have the small ones that we'll be giving out, eat that whole thing or at least most of it. If you have one of those big ones, at least a third of it. If you have a machine matzah, at least eat 3/4 of it. And try to eat it within 6 minutes. That is the halacha. After we eat the matzah, then we eat the maror. The main thing we use for maror is not horseradish, but cos lettuce, romaine lettuce. If you want to add horseradish to it, that's also good. But the halacha says that a preferable item is to use cos lettuce, either one big leaf or 2 small leaves. We lean when we eat the matzah, but we don't lean when we eat the maror. After the maror, we have the sandwich. So we take another size of matzah and another big leaf or small leaf, 2 small leaves, and we put it together. If you want to add some charein, obviously we dip the maror in the charoset. And we eat the korach, the sandwich, leaning. After that, we have the egg. The reason why we have an egg, because egg is a symbol of mourning. It's a cycle of life. And because we don't have the temple, so we are mourning for that, and therefore we eat the egg. Then we eat the meal, but you shouldn't really, by saying to stuff ourselves. We should eat what we need, but there still should be room left for the afikoman. The afikoman we eat is another matzah like this at the end of the meal, and that is instead of the paschal lamb. Hopefully this year Mashiach will come and we will have the paschal lamb, but if God forbid not, we eat the matzah instead of the paschal lamb. So it's also a very special matzah that we eat. After that we make the benching, and after that we drink the third cup, leading to the left. And then we open the door for Eliyahu Hanavi. Why do we do this? Why do we open the door? So, halacha says that the reason why we open the door is not connected really with Eliyahu Hanavi. We open the door because the night of Pesach in the Torah, in the Bible, is called Leil Shimurim. Leil Shimurim means this is a guarded night. God said, I guarded this night, which means I designated this night for the redemption, but not only for the redemption from Egypt, but for the ultimate redemption. It says in the Talmud, in the month of Nisan we were redeemed, and in the month of Nisan, which is the month of Pesach, we will in the future be redeemed. Pesach is a very auspicious time for the final redemption. So the halacha says, in the code of Jewish law, we open the door to show God we're ready to go and greet Mashiach. The reason why Eliyahu Hanavi is involved, because we know that the one who will herald or is connected to the coming of Mashiach is Eliyahu Hanavi. So let us all sing together, Eliyahu Hanavi.
Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Gila, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu Tishbi, Eliyahu Hanavi, Eliyahu
After Eliyahu Hanavi, we recite the Hallel, and then we drink the fourth cup, again leading to the left. And then we all recite in unison aloud, L'Shana Haba'a B'Yerushalayim, next year in Jerusalem. Now, next year in Jerusalem doesn't mean to visit Jerusalem and go to the King David Hotel. It means that Mashiach should come, and we should all be in Jerusalem with the temple. The night of Pesach, as we said before, is called a designated night. Many, many miracles happened to Jewish people on the night of Pesach. It goes back to even Abraham when he fought against the 4 kings and he was victorious over them. That happened on the night of Pesach. We know from Sanherib, the Assyrian king, who conquered the northern kingdom and exiled the 10 tribes that till today we don't know where they are. He, after that, wanted, and he went down to the southern kingdom, to Judah, to conquer Judah and Jerusalem. We all know the miracle that happened. He seized Jerusalem with tens and tens of thousands of soldiers. And the night before he was about to conquer, Hashem, the prophet says clearly, Hashem sent out an angel and killed and smit all the Sanherib's soldiers. That was the night of Pesach. That's why we read this story on the last day of Pesach, of Sanherib. The story of Mordechai and Esther in the time of Purim. The night of the first feast. And the night that the king Ahasuerus couldn't sleep. And that's when we start reading the Megillah aloud. Because that is the beginning of the miracle. The first feast, and when Ahasuerus, the king, couldn't sleep, and he heard the chronicles, how Mordechai saved him, and then the whole thing turned around from that night. That was the night of Pesach. So the night of Pesach, it's told in our literature, is a night designated for miracles. And therefore, anyone who needs miracles in their lives should make this night very special. Dedicate this night to what we need to do. Make it a special night, a holy night, and ask Hashem to send us the miracles we need. And we all need a miracle now, that Hashem should abolish the coronavirus and bring back all of us, the whole world, to normality. And more importantly, we all need Mashiach now. We are now going to sing, Tanya and Bini will sing L'Shana Haba Yerushalayim, followed by the popular song of Echad Miyodea. We wish you all a very, very, very joyous Seder and a very joyous Pesach. Chag Sameach.
Next year in Jerusalem. Sing with us, Echad Miyodea. Echad Miyodea. Echad Miyodea. Echad Eloheinu, 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 Shema Shamayim, Haaretz. Shnayim Miyodea. Fast forward. I said ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ah. I said ooh, ah, ooh, ah. I said ooh, ah, ooh, ah. I said ooh, ah, ooh, ah. I said who knows nine.
I know 9.
9 are the months that fall laid up, and 8 are the days that fall me up, and 7 are the days of the week, and 6 are the books of the Mishnah, 5 are the books of the Torah, 4 are the mothers, and 3 are the fathers, and 2 are the lovers that Moshe brought. And what is Hashem? What is Hashem? What is Hashem? On the hill and the other said, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, I said, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, Shnai Masa, Mi Yodei. Shnai Masa.
שנמסה שבטיה חמסה
טוביה עשרה דבריה תשעה חלקה שמונה ימי מילה שבעה ימי שבתה שישה סדרי משנה חמישה חושי תורה ארבע אמהות שלושה אבות שני לוחות הברית אחד אלוקינו אלוקינו שבשמיים ובארץ 13 מי יודע
13